Today, we're delving into a topic that has shaped the destiny of an entire nation: Shell, the multinational energy giant. In this video, we'll discuss how the Nigerian government's choice to give one foreign business control of Nigeria's priceless natural resources has made the nation poorer due to carelessness, corruption, and the satisfaction of the Nigerian people. Is this a story of how one company may rule a whole country, contaminating a nation's water supply with cancer-causing agents, damaging the environment and millions of people's way of life? A company that has complete control over its government and controls the military, using it to suppress dissent. Shell, company which destroyed the entire nation. History of Shell in Nigeria. To truly understand the impact of Shell, we must go back in time to the days when the company first set foot in the nation of Nigeria. Shell started business in Nigeria in 1938 as Shell DRC and was granted an exploration license. Moreover, in 1956, Shell Nigeria discovered the first commercial oil field at Oloibiri in the Niger Delta and started oil exports in 1958. Prior to the discovery of oil, Nigeria, like many other West African countries, strongly relied on agricultural exports to other countries to support its economy. Due to ignorance, many Nigerians thought the developers were looking for palm oil. Little did they know that it was deeper than that. Well, Shell Nigeria is the common name for Shell plc's Nigerian operations carried out through 4 subsidiaries, primarily known as the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited (SPDC). The Royal Dutch Shell's joint ventures account for more than 21% of Nigeria's total petroleum production, which is about 629,000 barrels per day. Controversies. Controversies? Sure. The company has been controversial in communities in the Niger Delta, who point to its poor environmental record and that most of the economic benefit from oil exploitation has not benefited local communities. In particular, in 1993, the Movement for the Survival of the Ogoni People, MOSOP, organized large protests against Shell and the government, and it led to a repression of the local community. The company has been responsible for some significant oil spills in the Niger Delta, and both Nigerian and European courts have held them liable for environmental destruction, with one of the most significant cases being at one of Shell's oil extraction facilities located in the Ijama Ebubu community. Shell's dominance in Nigeria. What's more, the oil giant Shell has inserted staffs into all the main ministries of the Nigerian government, giving it access to politicians' every move in the oil-rich Niger Delta. The company's top executive in Nigeria told U.S. diplomats that Shell had seconded employees to every relevant department and so knew everything that was being done in those ministries. According to them, the Nigerian government had forgotten about the extent of Shell's infiltration and was unaware of how much the company knew about its deliberations. The latest revelations came on a day that saw hackers sympathetic to the popular WikiLeaks target MasterCard and Visa over their decision to block payments to the whistleblower's website. The website's founder, Julian Assange, spent a second night in jail after a judge refused him bail prior to an extradition hearing to face questioning over sexual assault charges in Sweden. Furthermore, campaigners said the revelation about Shell in Nigeria demonstrated the tangled links between the oil firm and politicians in the country, where, despite billions of dollars in oil revenue, 70% of people live below the poverty line. Cables from Nigeria show how Ann Pickard, then Shell's vice president for Sub-Saharan Africa, sought to share intelligence with the U.S. government on militant activity and business competition in the contested Niger Delta, and how, with some prescience, she seemed reluctant to open up because of a suspicion the U.S. government was leaky. But that did not prevent Pickard disclosing the company's reach into the Nigerian government when she met U.S. Ambassador Robin Renee Sanders. as recorded in a confidential memo from the U.S. Embassy. At the meeting, Pickard related how the company had obtained a letter showing that the Nigerian government had invited bids for oil concessions from China. She said the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Odein Ajumagobia, had denied the letter that had been sent, but Shell knew similar correspondence had taken place with China and Russia. The ambassador reported. She said the GON, which is the government of Nigeria, had forgotten that Shell has seconded people to all the relevant ministries and that Shell consequently had access to everything that was being done in those ministries. Nigeria is one of Africa's leading oil producer and the 8th biggest exporter in the world, accounting for 8% of U.S. oil imports. Although a recent UN report largely exonerated the company, critics accuse Shell, the biggest operator in the Delta, and other companies of causing widespread pollution and environmental damage in the region. Militant groups engaged in hostage-taking and sabotage have increased. The disclosure was seized on by campaigners as evidence of Shell's vice-like grip on the country's oil wealth. Shell and the government of Nigeria are two sides of the same coin, said Celestine Akpobari of National Action Nigeria. Shell is everywhere. They have an eye and an ear in every ministry of Nigeria. They have people on the payroll in every community, which is why they get away with everything. They're more powerful than the Nigerian government. The criticism was echoed by Ben Amunwa of the London-based oil watchdog platform. Shell claims to have nothing to do with Nigerian politics, he said. In reality, Shell works deep inside the system and has long exploited political channels in Nigeria to its own advantage. Nigeria, however, strenuously denied the claim. Levi Ajuonoma, a spokesman for the state-owned Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, said, Shell does not control the government of Nigeria and has never controlled the government of Nigeria. This cable is the mere interpretation of one individual. It is absolutely untrue, an absolute falsehood, and utterly misleading. It is an attempt to demean the government, and we will not stand for that. I don't think anybody will lose sleep over it. New cable released to the world. Another cable released from the U.S. consulate in Lagos claimed that Pickard told U.S. diplomats that two named regional politicians were behind unrest in the River State. She also asked if the American diplomats had any intelligence on shipments of surface-to-air missiles or SAMs to militants in the Niger Delta. She claimed Shell has intelligence that 1 to 3 SAMs may have been shipped to Nigerian militant groups, although she seemed somewhat skeptical of that information and wondered if such sensitive systems would last long in the harsh environment of the Niger Delta, the cable said. Shell had learned from the British government details of Russian energy company Gazprom's ambitions to enter the Nigerian market. Recently, Gazprom signed a $2.5 billion or 1.5 billion pounds deal with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to build refineries, pipelines, and gas power stations. However, Shell put a request to the U.S. consulate for potentially sensitive intelligence about Gazprom, a possible rival, which had secured a promise from the Nigerian government of access to 17 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which is roughly a tenth of Nigeria's entire reserves. Pickard said that the amount of gas was only available if the GON were to take concessions currently assigned to other oil companies and give them to Gazprom. She assumed Shell would be the GON's prime target. However, there was an alleged conversation with a Nigerian government minister which had been secretly recorded by the Russians. Shortly after the meeting in the minister's office, a verbatim transcript of the meeting was received from Russia. With all that occurred, Shell declined to comment on the allegations, saying, "You're seeking our views on a leaked cable allegedly containing information about a private conversation involving a Shell representative, but have declined to share this cable or to permit us sufficient time to obtain information from the person you say took part in the conversation on the part of Shell. In view of this, we cannot comment on the alleged contents of the cable, including the correctness or incorrectness of any statements you say it contains." With all that has been said, what do you think? Is Shell truly controlling a nation? Does it seem like they still have good intentions for the nation? Please share your answer in the comments below. Remember, your input is invaluable.